Hey, welcome back to my garden. Today I'm really excited to show you what we call the hummingbird garden. This is kind of like a little bit of our kitchen garden. It's right outside the kitchen. We hang out here quite a bit. And we basically started clearing what was here because it was like all overgrown when we moved in. So there were a few like nice kind of shrubs and stuff. The Rose of Sharon hibiscus was always here and a few others. But other than that, it was mostly just like weeds and grass. So after we cleared everything out, we kind of started putting things in that we thought we might want for here, or just things that we didn't really have a place for yet, and then we were gonna like move them out. Um, and because we get a lot of hummingbirds here, I think we're kind of targeting things that they would like as well. And we have two types of hummingbirds. So we have Anna's hummingbirds, which are here all year round, and in winter there aren't really a lot of flowers for them, so they're actually omnivores and they switch to eating like insects. And it's actually really cool. Sometimes I'll see them go along the house, like kind of under the roof, and they'll just be like picking out little spiders and stuff like that. We also put up a hummingbird feeder for them so that we can still enjoy watching them. And then we also have rufous hummingbirds, and they're super special because they're only here for half the year. So they fly south for winter and they overwinter, I think, in like Southern California, maybe northern Mexico. And then they come up kind of March time, like end of March. Their journey actually coincides with the red flowering currants. So those are native to the West Coast, and they um, start to bloom, first, obviously, in like Southern California, Northern California, and then the hummingbirds basically follow them up the whole West Coast, and some of them will just like end here for the summer and they'll stay on Vancouver Island. Others will go up to Alaska or, wherever. Anyway, so because we only have them for half the year, they're kind of extra special. Yeah, so those are the two hummingbirds that we have, and they tend to like kind of reds, purples, blues, pinks, kind of like some hot colors. They like yellow, so there's kind of a mix of color. Generally, they like tube flowers, so things like salvias that they can kind of like put their beak in. Um, and we kind of did think as well about like plants that they had evolved with, and even if it wasn't these specific hummingbirds, we wanted to plant plants that were like hummingbird plants. So even like nasturtiums, fuchsias, things like that kind of evolved with hummingbirds. So yeah, anyway, so I guess I'll show you around. We have a few kind of big shrubs, which are like the structure, and then we're kind of going for like a cottage garden feel. So a little bit flowy, a little bit like haphazard, but in like a nice way. um, so the big rose of Sharon blooms basically like July through September, and the hummingbirds are just like absolutely love it. The bees love it too. So that tends to be like covered, and even in winter, I'm pretty sure that the hummingbirds nest in this one because the the growth is pretty dense, so I think it's like a pretty good shelter spot for them. And the tip of the shrub where there's a few bare branches, like that's where they kind of like monitor their territory because hummingbirds can be really territorial too. So you do sometimes catch like fights happening, or there'll be somebody like on the gladiolus, and then somebody else will swoop down and kind of chase them off, and like it's very entertaining to watch, but very hard to film. Anyway, so there's the Rose of Sharon, and then on this side, I'll show you some B-roll from May when the beauty bush was in full bloom. This is I'm like just over 6 feet, so I think this one's at least 10 feet for like the bulk of it. And this one blooms all of May, and again, they love that one. And then we also have an oak leaf hydrangea, and this one is like, I think it's like a species one. It's native to North America, and the bees absolutely love it. Like they're just like all over it. And I think part of the difference is that because it's like maybe like a little less manipulated to work well in the garden, it's still kind of in its more natural state where it still produces a lot of like pollen and nectar and things that the pollinators like. So anyway, it's kind of the wrong plant for here because this one wants to be like 8 by 10 or something like that. Like it's kind of sprawly. and it's been cut back quite a few times over the year, but it like ends up just looking a little misshapen. So the plan is this winter to dig it up, maybe divide it into like three, because I'm pretty sure that it has like offshoots as well, and put it somewhere else in the garden where it can just like get as big as it wants. And then we'll think of something else for here. And then on this side, so when we moved in, yeah, this was the part that was like all grass, all weeds. And basically, what I did was I dug the entire top layer with a shovel and then just like flipped it over, so that it would be like kind of, if the grasses were growing up now, they're trying to grow down and then their roots are exposed. So it kind of kills things but keeps like the nutrients in. So I did that, and then I did some cardboard, and then I put in like a topsoil that we bought in. And then basically it was a blank canvas. um, so we kind of just like started putting some things in here and there. The zinnias we grew from seed. Same with like the verbena. This one's actually from last year. This one overwinters in our area, so it comes up every year. The yarrow as well we did from seed, and that's actually our native one. This one's like covered in hoverflies in particular. They seem to really, really love this one. Um, and then yeah, there's like the lobelia, which again is like super popular with the bees. I'm pretty sure it is a hummingbird flower. And this one is like kind of cool too. It's like, I'm not sure what the genetics are, but it's like cardinal flower structure, but with the color of some of those like kind of tropical low growing lobelias. So that's kind of cool. And then on this side is the pot arrangement. So when we started gardening, we lived in the city and we had like a really small patio. So it was like all pots. Um, and that's kind of how we got into outdoor gardening. And then, of course, indoor gardening is all pots too. So there's just like, yeah, something about arranging a ton of pots together and just like stuffing them full of plants is like really exciting. So we do like a display here kind of throughout the year. So in winter, we might put in some like evergreens, just some like red dogwood sticks, just like whatever to make it look kind of colorful because it can be pretty drab at that time of year. And then lots of spring bulbs. So I'll do like the kind of bulb lasagnas in like a lot of the deep pots. So then we get a display over a couple months where it's like, daffodils, then tulips, hyacinths, things like that. And yeah, so over here, we kind of have like a few different categories. This big pot's kind of like the elephant in the room. So this one, it was like an awesome find at Costco. And we basically just like packed it full of stuff. Lewis got these gladiolas. I'll have to look up the name, I don't remember, but it was like I saw the color when he brought them home, and I was like, I'm not quite sure I'm gonna like work that in. But then it ended up working like amazing. So we did like the pot with these cannas that we overwintered in the garage. It was like a big pot of them from last year, and then I divided them, put them in a few different places. So a big clump came here, and then we also have a little fuchsia and a salvia, and these were both also overwintered in the garage, which was kind of an experiment. It's unheated, but it was just warm enough that they were fine. um, and yeah, that's basically it. There's also like a hosta in here just for some extra leafiness. Hummingbirds are all over this. They love the gladiolas, the cannas, the salvias, and the fuchsia. Um, and then, yeah, so I love mixing different things in pots, and it also becomes like a little bit more forgiving. Sometimes you'll have something um, like the cannas like a ton of water, and the fuchsia tends to want to dry out a little bit in between watering, so it doesn't want to like sit in water. But when you plant them together, basically the cannas take all the water, and then the fuchsias get their dry period that they like, and then you just water kind of frequently. So this one we water every 2 days. And they seem to kind of create like a balance among themselves, and then you don't have to worry about it as much. For the elephant ears, obviously these guys want like a ton of water, especially when they're in a sunny position like this. So for those, I actually sealed the hole in the pot before I planted them. I think some water can still like escape, but overall it retains water a lot better. And then obviously the zinnias, I love this one is Lime Queen. And we grew, I don't know, at least 20 of them from seed this year, and I have them like all over the place. I just love the color, and they're also really good in arrangements. And then the other kind of aspect to this is all the succulents. So I love doing arrangements with different types of succulents, and I love putting like rocks and things like that in them too. I'll put some close up shots, but a lot of these we propagated ourselves. So yeah, like things like this guy here, it was just like a small bunch when we got it, and then as it grew bigger, we like divided it, so we have like another one. And then same with the Aeonium, we actually started with just like one plant last year, and then over winter I kept like cutting it and propagating it, so we ended up with like seven. So then when it came to spring and I could plant them out, we had like a ton to work with. And then yeah, some cactuses. I love the Aeonium too. We've actually had it for a few years. The parent died, but this was a prop from the parent, so it's always nice to have backups. And then the pond here, the little like potted pond, it looks a little bit scummy. I ended up putting duckweed in it because it was starting to get a little algae, and I didn't want it to be like, yeah, just that kind of like scummy. And like sometimes the dogs will drink from here too. So I thought hopefully the duckweed would keep it clean. And then earlier in the season, we put a water iris, and that was really beautiful. It bloomed. Um, but yeah, with the duckweed, it's cute too. Like the wasps come here all the time, and they just like land on the duckweed, drink some water, and I'm pretty sure that they eat mosquito larvae too, which are like just below the surface. So that's a bonus. And then on this side, basically the structural plant is this camellia, and it was growing all the way up to the roof. So it was completely out of control. So early this spring, I cut it way back, and the whole center of it was just like sticks. And I did some research beforehand, so I chose like the right time of year and stuff, but it's always like a little bit risky when you do like a super hard cut. And I cut about like half of the plant off. But it's filled in so nicely, so that's amazing. And it didn't give us a bunch of flowers, and because I've like cut it too, it probably won't for at least a year or two. But I want to keep shaping it and kind of use it more for its like evergreen structure because it's so glossy and like rich. And at a time where everything else is kind of brown, it's like very valuable. And then this guy here is a helenium. The variety was like autumn sneezeweed, but we grew it last year from seed, and it just grew like a rosette, and it wasn't like big enough to bloom. So this is the first year it's bloomed. I think I may have messed that up a little bit because there were quite a few stalks, and then I tried to do the like Chelsea chop, so like cut it back part way to make it bushier. But the stems that I cut back kind of stopped growing. So only the one stem survived, but it's like beautiful. And again, it's like, I don't know, at least 5 feet tall. So I'm excited about it all just like blooming out. And then we have a really big salvia as well. I don't know if I mentioned, Lewis calls this the Hawaii bed because it's the most like, it stays the warmest in winter. It's like right next to the house. It faces kind of south by southeast. So it gets like a lot of good light even in winter. Like I would say, especially in winter when the sun is low, it gets a lot of light. So things survive here that probably shouldn't in our zone. Like generally we're kind of zone 8, like the coldest it'll get is about like -10. And that'll, maybe happen once a year. But this bed here, we have things that are zone 9 that survive and come back. So that's amazing. um, yeah, so more of the zinnias, like the gladiolus, like these ones we just left in the ground and they were fine and they came back. And then, yeah, more of the yarrow. I'll have to do another tour kind of later in the season because we have a ton of asters in here, and there's some like echinacea coneflower. There's some dahlias that aren't quite blooming yet, but should be soon. So thank you for joining me on this little tour of our hummingbird garden, and I'll give you an update again in a month or so when everything's changed, and I'll see you next time.